And now we come to our story behind the story segment, where we talk with our guests about, well, their backstory, how they got to where they are. We talked briefly, Mal, about we touched on your journey a little bit, right? We talked a little bit about your writing, how it got you to where you are now. But yeah, give us a feel for like, what's your backstory? What's we need to know?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been reading voraciously and writing since I was like 12 years old, and always be interested in books. I mentioned how like everybody's like back then was like, no, you can't make any money being an author. So I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go like, work in software and computers. But then when my book started selling, I'm like, bye, I quit. I'm going to be a writer, with like zero hesitation, because that's what I've wanted to do all my life. And it was really interesting because one of the things I learned that was pretty fascinating about books is like, we have this idea in our heads, or we had at one point, that books are 300 pages long, give or take a little bit. And the interesting thing is that books didn't used to be 300 pages long, but it was the most cost-effective and efficient book length for publishers to make the most money. So they made it so that books are 300 pages long. If you go back earlier than like the mass-produced Pulp Fiction era, books were however long the book needed to be. And so I actually find that kind of interesting, how the medium always affects the art, and that's part of the art in my regard, in my opinion. And so like two things really shaped how I did my art. And one of them was Facebook ads, and the other one was the Amazon 90-day pre-order that they used to have. Now we have a year, and it's like, I almost wish we had the 90-day, because it was like, it really helps me have that hard deadline. But so I was advertising. I had my book one in my series, and I'd written in November of 2016, when I had that amazing $25,000 month. Book four had come out, and I had planned on about a 12 to 15 book series. And I was like, crap, it's going to take me years to write this 12 to 15 book series. And I'm going to be advertising this one book forever. And it's not, I'm like thinking to myself, it's not going to work forever. And so I decided to break my series in half and make it so 1 through 3 was effectively a prequel. And then book 4 actually started a new series. And then I got people into that. And then the Amazon pre-order window caused me to, when I got to book 5 was like 140,000 words long. And I had like it had 16 POVs, no, 15 POVs. And there was this major plot line following this one group of characters that I hadn't touched since the middle of the book. And the Amazon pre-order deadline was looming. So I'm like, well, at the end of the book, they just magically show up, and it's been 10 years. And everybody's like, where the hell have you been? And they're like, hey, it's a pretty cool story. Wouldn't you like to know? And then the book ends, which is great. End all your books on a hook, like a cliffhanger, as much as you possibly can. It really actually helps sales quite a bit. And so I ended up writing a series of 6 novellas that were what happened to that group of characters in that 10 years. And it was actually, to date, those are the most profitable words I've ever written, because the books were just so easy to write. And people just absolutely love them because they told this story they were desperate to know. And so I think one of the things I really enjoyed about my journey is like how the medium of how the art's delivered, and Amazon's 90-day pre-order, and then understanding ads and realizing my ads can capture people who like high concept admirals in starships planning out massive space navy battles really well. But there's all these people who want to read like hammer slammers, ground pounding Marines, in the muck kind of thing. And I don't have any of that for those people. So I'm like, oh, well, because I'm looking at the interest on Amazon, like, oh, if I could write some stories about the boots on the ground and tell their stories, I can pull them into the overall universe, and I can use these targets that I've never used before. So I did that. And I wrote this series called Rika's Marauders that was all about these mechanized warriors and how they were always in the shit. And I got to write like gritty urban conflict with like people firing tactical nukes at each other and all sorts of wild, fun sci-fi things that I never got to write about. And that caused me to start writing faster, because I had all these ideas and I had these places I wanted to fit things into my universe. And my series just spider webbed out. And I ended up with 23 interconnected series that all form one universe. And I decided at that point, I want to write 500 books. And so I've got a long way to go still. And I've got that goal still firmly in mind. I want to write 500 books. I want to write this interconnected, massive story that comes back mostly to like one singular point at the end. And in a way, like if it wasn't for the medium and the mechanism of advertising my books, if it hadn't been for those two things, I don't know if I ever would have come here. I might have written like a 7, 8, maybe 10, 15 book series, and then been like, I wrote books, look at me. But, these other things like got me to actually write a much bigger world than I ever would have written before. And I'm super happy I did it.
Yeah, no, that's not to shoehorn myself into that, but hearing you say that is encouraging, because I've kind of been planning to do the same thing. And
Cool.
and I don't talk to a lot of authors who are doing that sort of thing. Like you said, the spider web of like building a universe and then staying in that unit. I think of like So like things like Warhammer 40K,
Mhm.
which is just this huge, like over 30 years of content of all these like side characters. And obviously it's totally different because it's based off a tabletop wargaming sort of thing.
Yeah.
But there's just plethora of content in there for people to devour, and they spend all their time in it. And like something akin to that,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
is quite the task to.
It might be from before your time, but my first exposure to that sort of thing was Dragonlance. I don't know if you've ever read those
Okay.
books, but they were spin-off from Forgotten Realms and Dungeons and Dragons. But the Dragonlance
Sure.
book
Yeah.
were always some of my favorites when I was younger. And I was like, wow, they've got all these authors writing all these stories in this one big massive universe. And I love it. I can go and
Right.
I can, because I'm like one of those people, like when if I'm playing an RPG, I want to color in the whole map. I want to investigate all the areas. I want to open all the chests, get all the sets of armor, that sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
write my books for people who want that too. They want to color in the whole map and see all the places and everything.
Right. Well, Mal, thank you for joining us today. It was a great talk.
Absolutely.
We covered a lot of information. We'll have to have you back on at some point in the near future,
I would love that.
maybe 6 months or so from now.
Sure.
The Facebook ads landscape has changed, but it was great. What they say, death and taxes, and then Facebook ads changing, right? That should be the third one on that list of things that are inevitable. So yeah, we will definitely have you on again in the near future. It was a blast. Do you have anything you want to shout out here at the end here? Like, where can people find you for like your Facebook ad courses, things like that?
So if folks want to learn more about my books, my fiction, you can go to aeon14.com. That's AEON14.com. All my sci-fi stuff is there. And if you want to learn more about Facebook ads and dive in deeper about a lot of things I've talked about, my wife and I have a website called storytellerlab.net. There's a free 7-day trial where you can see all the stuff we have up there. And then if you want to actually sign up, it's only $37 a month, and you basically get access to everything that's in my brain and Jill's brain as well. So 2 brains.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And Emma and Kelly, thank you both as well for co-hosting and joining me here as always. We will see you all, guys, in the next one. Have a good one, folks.